What's up y'all, Jmaculate here. In today's video, I'll be demonstrating how to create an FX loop using the Sonicware Lofi-12 XT. This resampling tactic allows you to send audio from the Lo-Fi to an external device, which you can then add effects to or do sound processing on, and then send the audio back to the Lo-Fi. You might do this if you have other samplers that have effects that you're more familiar with, or that you like the sound of more than what's on the Lofi-12 XT. Alright, let's get to it. The first method I'll show uses an analog signal path. You send audio from the headphone jack to an external device, which then outputs audio back into the Lofi-12 XT. It's not a perfect solution because you can accidentally create a feedback loop if you're not careful, but it's simple to set up and very easy to control because of this volume knob, which only controls the level of the signal going out at the headphone jack. So let's go over how to set this up. You'll start by connecting the headphones out of the Lofi-12 XT to the input of the device you want to use external effects on. So here I'm going to use the SP303. And then connect the main output of your external device into the input of your Lofi-12 XT. It's also a good idea to have the main output of your external device set to 0 so you don't accidentally create a feedback loop. And lastly, you need to have the main out of the Lofi-12 XT going into your audio interface, mixer, speakers, or whatever else you might be using to listen to the device. So now that the connections are set and the main out of the external device is set to 0, we're ready to start passing audio from the Lofi-12 XT to the external device. I've got this drum break that I want to add some effects to. So to record it onto the SP303, I need to turn up the volume knob on the Lofi-12 XT until the levels are high enough. And before you record any audio, make sure the main output of the external device is set to 0. So I'll record it in using the Lo-Fi setting on the SP303 for some extra crunch. Once you finish recording the audio, turn the volume knob down on the Lofi-12 XT, then turn the main output up on your external device. If you can't hear audio from your external device, you may need to turn monitoring on the Lofi-12 XT, which you can do from the sample screen by holding function and then pressing record, and then pressing down the B button to turn on monitoring. Now we're hearing the SP303, so I can start adding effects before passing the sample back to the Lofi-12 XT. I'll start by adding a filter to reduce those artifacts in the high end. Let's try the vinyl sim effect next. Once you've processed the audio as much as you like, you can send it back to the Lofi-12 XT by entering the sampling screen by holding function, then pressing record. Just make sure the volume knob is turned all the way down, then head to the sampling page, and select the L and R input, and then arm the recording. And when you're ready, play the sample. And now I've got the sample back on the Lofi-12 XT with the effects we baked in from the 303. Since I'm done playing the sample from the 303, I'll set the 303's volume to 0. The analog signal method is great if you have other hardware samplers, but you can also use the USB port to send audio digitally to a host device like a computer, tablet, or phone. So here's how to set that up. I'll be using Koala Sampler on my phone, but there are plenty of other cool audio apps you could use too. The first thing to do is connect a USB cable from the Lofi-12 XT to the phone. As usual, my setup is a little janky. I don't have a USB micro to USB-C cable. So what I'm using here is a Type-C dock which has USB-A ports on it. And then I have a USB micro cable going from the Lofi-12 XT to the dock, which I then plug into the phone. Now I'll check the audio settings in Koala and see if the Lofi-12 XT is showing up as an audio device, which you can access by clicking the icon with 3 lines in the top right corner, then selecting Settings. Then from the audio page, select the drop-down on Input, and then you can choose the Lofi-12 XT, which should show up as a device. And just like before, you want to be mindful of the input and output settings so you don't create a feedback loop. It's a good idea to keep this monitoring setting feature in Koala off. Now when I play audio from the Lofi-12 XT, the mic meter on Koala shows the signal coming through. So I'll activate a hold recording by swiping up on one of the pads, and then I'll play a different sample. Now that I have the sample in Koala, I can do all kinds of effects processing. One super nifty feature is stem separation, which you can use to remove drums from a sample. Like any stem solution, it's not perfect, but sometimes you can layer effects after separating the stems to get the sample back into shape. So now let's add some effects. And another neat feature on Koala is time stretching. Getting a time stretch effect is challenging on the Lofi-12 XT, but on here, it's as easy as clicking a button. You just have to select stretch from the edit menu, and then set the duration. And now I can set the tempo to whatever I want. To get the sample back to the Lofi-12 XT, I just need to go to the sampling screen and then select USB audio by turning the A knob. And now I'll arm the recording and then play the sample on Koala. And now I have the sample back on the Lofi-12 XT, so I can keep working with it from here. So those are a few ways to do external effects processing on the Lofi-12 XT. Both methods are pretty easy to set up, and they give you a lot of control over the sound that you bring back into the device. Well, that does it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.